If you had the opportunity to live in a children's wonderland, would you choose anywhere else? We don't just say, we do. It's the Stain City way.
Good afternoon, you're watching Real Talk with myself, Anele, coming to you live on SABC3 where the stage is yours. Welcome to the show. This is gonna be long, just walk with me. My guest today is a powerhouse in her own right, a woman from humble beginnings who had one dream of becoming a medical doctor. She is multi-talented and a self-made successful businesswoman who has sat on many boards, including Anglo-American, Discovery Holdings Limited, Woolworths Holdings, and Aspen Pharmacare. Today, she and her family own and operate South Africa's luxury boutique stores, Luminance and Jimmy Choo. She is the recipient of the African Economy Builder Lifetime Achiever Award for 2016, the Global CEO 2016's Africa's Most Influential Woman in Business, Government SADC South Award for the Business and Professional Services sector at regional and national level, and Fabulous Woman Award 2016. She is also a wife, a mother, a grandmother. She has just written a book, Equal But Different, doctor to an entrepreneur, author, now author, Dr. Judy Dlamini is our guest today. And she's wearing one of her own. Look at you.
Oh, thank you.
Is that a Luminance ensemble?
Yes, it is.
So did the ladies at the shop, did they dress you and say?
They did.
There's no ways.
I obliged.
There's no ways you can go there and not look like $1 million.
I know, and thanks to them.
Oh, do you know the funniest thing for the longest time? Because I knew you as Fisa's mother.
Yes.
Nothing else.
I know.
So all these titles. Some people are like, Dr. Judy Dlamini. I'm like, no, that's Mrs. Ngasane.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know. They're like, no, you were just speaking to Dr. Judy Dlamini. I'm like, no, that's Mrs. Ngasane. And also Fisa's mother. That's who she is.
Yeah.
So your surname, you've never thought to change it?
I never changed it, actually, because Sizo was comfortable with it, and the kids were comfortable with it, except that once I stopped practicing medicine, I remember I set Fiso, Nkanyezi, and Sizo down and said, okay, guys, it's up to you. Do I change? Don't I? And Sizo was like, it's fine. Nkanyezi is like, but that's who you are. You are Dlamini. And my son says, well, it's your choice. So I'm like, okay, exactly. I'm like, okay, why should I go through the hassle anyway?
Because this is what I'm alluding to, is that your immediate circle, your immediate support structure, the people that have been the closest to you, be it family or close friends, there's never been a pressure to be, you know, a woman, you know, a wife, a this.
No.
Like, it just looked like it's always come so naturally.
It has, and I actually need to thank my parents first, because to me, being a woman didn't make you less. It didn't mean that you couldn't be ambitious. It didn't mean that you couldn't achieve. But also Sizo's parents, especially the mother that I got to know quite well, who actually raised him very well, you know.
Yes.
And she was a very strong woman, one of the strongest women I know, actually, and very progressive. So I wasn't a Magodi. I was just one of the daughters. I was seen and heard, and that makes a big difference. Yeah.
So, seen and heard, I like that, because you were in primary school when you were 4 years old.
Yes.
That is very early.
I know.
That is extremely early. Because, I mean, I'm looking at, my son's 2 years old, so you want to tell me in 2 years' time?
He's going to school.
He's going to be going to school?
Yeah.
No, Mom.
It was by accident.
How?
Well, my mother was a school teacher. And the person who looked after me walked out on her. And she said, okay, let's go to school. You'll just play in grade R or whatever it was. Quite 12 first year those days.
Okay.
So these great things I knew, obviously. And I didn't play because I think I was just this boring kid who wanted to learn. So instead of playing, I started using my slate also, you know, to do what they were doing.
Because naturally kids want to do what other kids are doing.
Of course. You know? Who do you play with? Because you're in class with other kids.
And then you started learning just like that.
I started learning, yeah.
So what fascinates me is the fact that your sister, your half sister,
yes,
is a nurse,
yes,
right?
Yes.
and she would tell you about the things that happen at the hospitals and the
Yes.
doctors, and they do that and they do
Yeah.
that. So the fascinating part of that story is you don't then say, oh wow, her stories are so amazing, I want to be a nurse. You're like, okay, I'm going to be a doctor.
It's actually quite interesting because I never looked at it that way. She was such a beautiful storyteller. But I guess what it talks to is that I was very ambitious and I actually looked up to her. But I listened to the stories more. And I guess in the stories I looked for power. I look for someone who has the final word, the decision maker.
Okay.
And I've always loved to make the decisions.
Yes.
Yeah.
And a doctor had come to your house to treat your
Yes,
dad, which then further certified
Exactly.
that, you know,
It was sealed.
Dr. Vusi Kabashi.
Yes.
Yeah. So he comes to treat your dad who's ill at your house.
Yes.
And then you're like, okay, this happens. My sister is in there. It means it's a calling for me.
It's a calling. You're too young to know, though. But it's just like you've had this thing in your mind from your sister's storytelling, and actually you see this. He's in charge of his own destiny. He's got a beautiful car. He's well dressed, and he hears my dad. What more do you want?
Oh, what car was it?
I think it was a Jack. I'm not sure. I'm
In
not
those
sure.
days?
No, he was doing well. He was
Clearly.
doing very well. Yeah,
Clearly.
But there was a reason for that. You know, driving from Claremont to Westville, because we're based in Westville, he was quite good to his patients. So, yeah.
And you know, when you say clearly, like, you know, and in those days, let's be honest, it was Bantu education.
It was Bantu education.
Yes, and Bantu education came with the systems of limitation.
Oh, yeah.
Being told what you're not.
Exactly.
You are anti-European.
Yeah.
You are, no, not even anti, you are non-European.
Non-European.
You are non-white.
Exactly.
You know, your education can only take you so far.
Exactly.
Where does your realistic nature leave the story? Because a normal black child back then would have been realistic, like, you know, I'd like to be a doctor, but how?
I've never been a realistic person in terms of dreaming. I live in my own head. I have these dreams and they come true, and you know, it helped. I have a tendency, I think I'm a very positive person. I actually remove myself from the negative reality. And I play in the positive space that removes the anger. Because I was a very angry child, angry at the system, because I was raised in Westville. And if you were in the township, it was different because you actually were with people that looked like you.
You were
There
surrounded.
Exactly. In the suburban areas, which was Westville, you were surrounded by people who didn't look like you. You were surrounded by signs that told you are less.
By people who didn't want you there.
They didn't want you there. The look was saying you less. The bus stop was saying non-European. So everything was fighting you. And I guess what that did, the anger then was channeled into big dreams. And I had to escape the space and say, I'm above this. I'm equal to them. And I'll use education to prove to myself that I'm equal to them.
Education being a very big thing in your household, even
It
as a
is.
kid. I
It
mean,
is, actually.
your mom wanted to be educated. Your grandmother ran away from...
It's my mother who ran away because my grandfather
Yeah.
didn't believe that you have to educate girl kids because they'll get married and go. And my mother was like, hell no. And she ran away and she became a school teacher. And she got matric actually when I was at medical school.
Yes,
Yeah,
I know this. Why were you guys living in Westville when all the black people were living in the townships?
It was because my dad arrived in Westville when there were only 2 houses. He bought a property there, and he was very entrepreneurial. He had his own small painting company, and there was this thing, I'm going to forget the legislation then. So if you had property, if you had been in the white areas for a certain period of time, then you actually became an exempted native. So you had a different dompas, and so he was allowed to be in the white areas. But then it was a process to get him out of Westville. So we stayed there for longer because they then would say, okay, you're going to some tin houses. So people were removed to tin houses, and my dad said, hell no, I'm not. So he bought property. There were a few areas in this country where blacks were allowed to buy property and actually have title deeds. So he bought property in Claremont, he built, and then we moved there. So he was a very proud person. He wouldn't even take, pension. He used to say, Mali Mbabanga, he's not going to. I was very proud.
It's in the blood. Listen, we're going to take a quick ad break. If you have any questions or comments for Dr. Dlamini, we want to hear them. So please send us your voice note on our WhatsApp line. The number is on the screen. We will be right back. And welcome back in studio. I'm joined by Dr. Judy Dlamini. Let me bring you up to speed. So a 4-year-old Judy became enthralled by a doctor who'd come to treat her ill father. A seed was planted that would change her life forever. She knew that she wanted to be a doctor. So then down the education path, Marion Hill. Is that high school?
Yes.
Beginning of high school. So
yes.
Back then, Form 1.
Form 1, exactly. You're good.
I know, because my dad used to be like, what are you studying Form 4? I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. So from Form 1, you in Marion Hill, and is it a religious school, a Catholic school?
It's a Catholic school.
Okay.
Yes, it's a Catholic school. It's mixed or co-ed.
Okay.
So boys and girls, and yeah.
Why did you go to Vryheid then?
Oh, you don't want to know that. So I go to Marion Hill, Form 1, it's all good. Form 2, all good. Form 3, I start going out with Sizwe.
Your husband?
Yes. And the nuns, they were very strict. I come from a very religious family, staunch Catholics. So prior to Form 3, I used to go to grotto and pray, go to church. I was just one of those kids.
Holy Rosary.
Oh, I tell you, I could recite it like there's no tomorrow. And then now I start going out with this guy. And the nuns were very disappointed. So I remember when I finished Form 3, they write a letter to my dad and say, she's done well, she'll be coming back, but we need to have a conversation with you. And my dad was so strict. And I had to come up with lies and say, Dad, the maths there is not great. Let's look for a school, so that he wouldn't go to Marion Hill and get told that I actually have a boyfriend.
They are a bunch of snitches, though.
Of course they are.
Come on.
I know, Anyway.
But that was very quick thinking from you, though.
I had to. I was my dad's pet.
Yes.
But my dad was so good because you never really knew that he loved you more than the rest. But you just felt it has to be me because I'm the youngest, you know? So he trusted me. He believed in me. So poor daddy had to run around looking for a school, and he would get to the school and they would say, we have space, but the math class is full. Bantu education, you'd already have one class that was teaching maths, and it tended to be full. And I would say to him, Dad, it's maths or nothing.
Because he would, doctor in your head.
Yes, I knew.
Yeah.
So he would run around. So that's how I came to Vryheid. And actually, even at Vryheid, a cousin of mine had actually studied at Vryheid. So she put in a good word for me.
Okay.
And then they could put me into the maths class.
But this is where then you say your leadership skills were born.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Because then you started taking on roles that would make you speak more.
Yeah.
Do you think leadership can be taught? Or is it something that's always in you and it needs something to wake it up?
I think it can be taught.
Okay.
I truly believe that almost anything can be taught. It's just easier if you have it within you. And it starts with just leading yourself. You know, leadership of self. You can't lead other people if you can't lead yourself, you know. And each one of us is capable of doing that. Therefore, each one of us can lead.
You used to work at your mother's tuck shop at the soccer games,
yes.
you know, on the weekends.
Yes.
Which means that she had a job and she had that as a side thing, which means she was entrepreneurial.
Yes.
Therefore, you and your sister who used to work there, you watching this happen, right?
Exactly.
So your entrepreneurship, that's why you own things like Luminance, you've got your investment companies and you've got your property companies, because entrepreneurship was something that was in you from a young age.
True.
So I extend the leadership question. Can entrepreneurship be taught? Because I feel it's the only way this country is going to come out of its economic slump.
It can. You know, in my view, we actually need to start teaching entrepreneurship from primary school.
Okay.
Which is why at Future Nation schools, you actually teach it from primary school, because it can be taught, and it has to be taught. Obviously, we come from a history where you were told where you can live, you were told what you can or can't do, and it was mainly what you can't do. So there's that mindset that you actually need to get a job. Someone has to create a job for you.
The safety of
the
a salary.
safety, exactly. One. And also not believing in yourself. And also Bantu education, which doesn't teach you thinking tools, it doesn't give you innovation as one of the things that is innate.
Yeah.
So it actually kills the entrepreneurial spirit that I think most of us are born with. So I think the mindset is one of the main things that we need to deal with, and or actually teaching entrepreneurship and just thinking tools, because I don't think education has kept up with the changes, you know, in the world.
Yes.
Because you still have a teacher standing in front of the class, telling them what to do.
We still have a syllabus that people were studying 20 years ago.
Exactly.
And it's the same
look
thing.
Look at how things have changed.
Yeah.
So we really need to change that.
How do you deal with failure?
You learn. You learn from failure. It's interesting that I don't think you learn from success, because when you become successful in a certain area, you don't really have the time to say, how did I succeed? It's like,
I'm successful.
I'm successful.
Thank you. That's all.
That's me. That's just how I am, you know? And the truth is, you just get a few things right. But when you fail, you then pause and say, why? And it's up to you whether you learn from that or you actually don't learn from that. So
how do you take stock of your failure?
I go back. And sometimes the failures that I've had is sometimes you don't listen to the inner voice. 10 out of 10 times when I didn't listen to the inner voice in terms of taking decisions, because sometimes you actually say, you know what, logistically it makes sense, these are the facts, but the inner voice is informed by experience and your value system. And those two things are key. Now, if you don't listen to the inner voice, you mess up.
So you say that you failed your medicine first year and second year.
First year and second year, one course each.
One course each, right? At that age, it's very difficult to be aware of an inner voice, right? Yeah. It's also very difficult to be aware of your value systems, because that's when they are teenagers. Your value system is a teenager when you're in varsity. So they're instilled in high school.
Yeah.
And as a child. But when you get the freedom to not be with your parents, that's when your value systems are questioned.
I know, that's true.
Okay, I'd feel. So how do you take stock of failure when you're that young? Because I feel like what happens today, you go study in varsity, and then you fail your first year or your second year. Yeah. And then immediately you rush to say, but this is not what I want to study anyway. This is not my passion. Yeah. I'd rather be this. Whereas at most times, if you just took stock of it, you know. And so at that age, what do you think we should be doing?
You know, just to go back to my own situation.
Yes.
When I got to medical school, we had Indian, colored, and Africans, right? Indians were in the majority. Their education was way superior to ours. You went into a physics laboratory, and from Bantu education, you were told this is a beaker. Oh, this is how you weigh. And the Indian kids were actually pipetting, doing everything, running out. So when we're busy messing up the laboratory session, they were busy playing. So I knew that this failure doesn't define me as a person. This failure is because of what I've been fed or what I've failed to get from the Bantu education that was designed for me. And that instilled in me that I'm going to prove to this system that I can. So I didn't take it like it's the cause that's wrong or it's me that's wrong. I said it's the system. I'm going to fight it by making sure that I get it.
So basically today, you must just go to the grass, be honest with yourself and go to the grassroots level of the failure.
Why you failed.
So after receiving her medical degree from the University of KwaZulu-Natal, she became a family practitioner for a couple of years. But that wasn't enough. How she went from being a general practitioner to becoming one of the most respected women in business, we'll find out after the break. And don't forget that this is your last chance to enter our weekly at-home competition. There's 5,000 rands e-card up for grabs. The winner I will announce tomorrow. Make sure you're checking out our social media pages on how to enter. We'll be right back. And we're back. Thank you so much for tuning in this afternoon. We are in conversation with one of the most successful businesswomen in Mzansi, a self-made millionaire with a penchant for beautiful clothes like what she's wearing, but most importantly, even greater minds. So obviously the WhatsApps are coming in. The entire country is like, Aike, since they don't have your personal number. For this hour, this is their personal number. So let's go hear the one.
Hi Anele, my name is Judy Dlamini, and my question for Judy Dlamini is, how does she handle being such a successful businesswoman and in a basically a male-dominated business world, and how does she remain successful and so gorgeous?
Hi, you're so kind. Hi, Madlamin. Thanks very much for those kind words. I was just looking at one of my nieces making a presentation somewhere where she is, and she was saying women don't understand that the power is not given to you, take it. Ooh. Right? You take the power, and you don't have to lose your femininity. You can still remain soft, but firm, be respectful, humble, but make your point very clear. So it's important to know what you want from life. It doesn't matter whether you're a girl or a boy, and take it. Empower yourself and just go for it.
Okay. So you've been quoted as saying being married to a banker is a hindrance.
It was at some stage.
Oh yes, it was a hindrance.
It was at some stage. Yeah. It's not a banker, thanks God, anymore. There was a time where I would want to go to R&B because, am I allowed to say the name?
Yes, of course. Yeah, of course, of course.
Because they were so innovative and putting deals together. But Sizwe and I are very conscientious in terms of this governance thing.
Yes.
We don't believe, no, I've just recused myself from the board meeting where decisions, no.
No.
Right? You stay out of this and I'll keep to my space. So that was the hindrance. Okay. At that time.
So because you're like, oh man, the offers are so great.
I know, I want to go
it's
there.
It's like the best deal, and now this guy's there.
I know. But anyway.
So this guy, Uncle Sizwe, your husband, how did you know, like, this is my guy and forever?
It's the inner voice. 3 months into it, which is like, hang on, you're only 14, you're thinking about marriage. I'm like, I would marry this guy. Pity I got him so early. He was my first boyfriend. So I'm like, maybe. But I was sure that we wouldn't get married because we're so young. I was just like, if I had met him at around 20-something, then.
So you already even thinking of that. It's like, oh, we're so young. I'd like for this to last forever. But how does it last from 14 until 58? Yeah. And it does.
Yeah, no, true.
And it
God's
does.
Grace.
God's grace,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
God's grace. And it's your birthday today. I forgot to tell everyone. You said at 6 p.m.
At 6 p.m.
We're 30 minutes early.
Okay.
We're 30 minutes early. As a woman, you can never have balance. It's a line that I go back to over and over in your book.
Yeah.
And because it's honest. And it's brutal, but because for years, you go to these seminars and women are talking like, it's all about balance, it's all about balance. Yeah. And finally somebody's got the guts to say, guys, there's no balance.
It doesn't exist.
Please unpack it for us.
Yes. Here's the thing. You just make choices. You just prioritize, because I wanted to specialize when I finished medicine. It was never my aspiration to be a GP. But I had to choose. I had Sfiso then, right? So I had to choose, if I want to sleep at home every day, I have to be a GP. So I parked that. It doesn't mean you can't do it. It just means you postpone the gratification of doing it, right? I wanted my doctorate. As a teenager, I thought, wow, I want to have this red academic attire. But I couldn't do it. I was raising kids. I was being a wife. I was trying to create some wealth for the family alongside Sizwe. So I packed it till the time was right. So you just postpone certain aspects of your dreams to make sure that you have a solid family, because that's very important. Family is everything.
I like that. You postpone certain aspects of your dream so that you can raise a family.
Yeah.
The decision to open up a bakery next to your practice, right? Yeah. If you've got a practice and you're a doctor and it's those days, even in these days, you're doing well financially, right? So when you say to me, the decision to also grow wealth for my family, was that a decision of, okay, we are okay financially, but I want to be more than okay?
It was always my dream.
Really?
It was always my dream. I always had to be more than okay. And I grew up in a family where my father was doing this, that, and the other. My mother was doing this, that, and the other. So it never was a childhood of, I have a career, I have this profession. It was, I wanted to be financially independent. That was very important to me. And that has changed over years in terms of how you define it. At some stage, it was like, I want to have a house that's fully paid for, a holiday home, a car, this, and education for my kids at the expensive private schools, trips overseas, such things. But obviously those aspirations grow as you grow.
They grow as you achieve them as well.
Yeah, true. But I've always been deliberately wanted to achieve. Financially, spiritually, and otherwise.
I was going to say, because unlike, you know, as a woman, as a career, there's never a balance. I find, and people who know you and people who've watched you, you're one of the few people who's got the balance in the financial and the spiritual. And
Thank you.
You know, it's like the financial one never stands out by itself. You know, where you're like, oh, you know, she's got so much money. You're just like, you know, she's such a wonderful person.
Thank you.
She's such a wonderful person. Another line that stands out in your book is when you said you must have changed your helper 9 times in the first year when Sfiso was born, which then speaks to you being able to ask for help.
Yes.
How did you decide that you will never move forward if you don't ask for help?
You know, I had no choice. I got married in 4th year. In 5th year, I got Sfiso. I had this help. The first one, I think, left after a week.
Yeah.
And I had to ask my mother to help and my sister. So actually, Sfiso stayed with my mother and sister for 6 months. From the age of, I think when he was 6 months up to 12, I think. And yeah, I had to. You have to ask for help.
So how do you interpret, because your dad taught you self-reliance, and that's why you said you've always wanted to be independent, because it's that DNA that your dad instilled in you. How do you interpret self-reliance as not ever asking for help? Because when someone says to me self-reliance, I'm like, okay, let me do it all myself.
Yeah, no, it doesn't.
What does it say?
Self-reliance means you rely on yourself for all the decisions that you make, right? But you have to be realistic. There are certain things that you can do on your own. There are certain things that you can't do on your own. And you reach out to those people that you trust and are willing to help. It's very important. I don't think no person is a what do you call it?
Island.
An island.
No man is an island.
No man is an island.
Yeah.
You always have to work with the people that you have and get help from them. Because that's one of the things that can actually pull you down if you think you can do everything yourselves. It's actually also about leadership where, yes, you might be a control freak like some of us, but you still have to give people to do what they're good at and just support them.
I like the way you said some of us, because yes, we are control freaks. Time for a quick ad break. Refill the cup of tea, turn down the heat on the stove. You can go back to cooking at 6 p.m. More when we return with Dr. Judy Dlamini. And you're watching Real Talk on SABC3. Welcome back. I tell you, Masterclass is in session, okay? What I've loved about watching you and your children is the fact that it was parenting as much as you were the authority. Ne? I just felt a conversation, like it was always like a two-way street. So it wasn't like, I am the mother and what I'm saying is right. It was always like a conversation. Hence, you know, you say you set them down to ask them about changing your surname. You know, when you were 14, you were going to go study again. You were like, hey, guys, I'm thinking I'm going to go study. There's things that I want to do. So it's always been like a bit of a conversation. How do you cultivate that culture as a parent in a society that is so dictatorial in how we're supposed to raise our children?
You know, I think the main thing is respect, mutual respect. There's so much you can learn from your children. And more importantly, just respecting them, respecting their opinion, because it empowers them. So even when they go to the world, they respect themselves, they respect the people they encounter, but they are not submissive, because you train them across the table, would chat, would discuss issues, and solicit their opinion and listen, you know. So yeah, it was always that type of relationship. And I think maybe I got that from my parents. Yeah, because my parents took us very seriously.
Really?
Yes, you know. So our opinion mattered. And then I get married. I get to know Sizwe's mom.
Who also
and
takes you seriously.
She takes me seriously. My opinion matters. So yeah, it's just luck in going through families that have a similar value system to yourself. I believe, yeah.
Is that why it was easy to start a business with your son?
It was actually. He was my soulmate.
Oh.
He just got me, you know? Yeah. Oh. Yeah. Yeah.
So you said after Sfisa passed away, you started a journal. What do you write in this journal? Like, because your heart is so broken. The opening line, what do you say to the world, to the universe, to God?
It's lonely to lose a child, because you can sit as a family and each one of you is actually in their own space at a different level of grief. The only person you have is God, basically. So I couldn't sleep. So I would wake up and just write something, you know, explain the pain I'm feeling, you know. Like I would say, you know how I'm feeling right now? It's like someone has ripped my heart off, no anesthetic, nothing, and I'm just watching this heart. I'm watching the bleeding. So you try to explain the pain as a way of healing, you know?
Because if you can define it,
Yeah.
if you can say this is what it is, it almost
Exactly.
feels like you can take control of it.
You can take control of it to some level. And you really, it's just you and your God.
Yeah. I remember you and Uncle Sis were speaking at one of the prayer sessions, and you said, you know, this has been the toughest time of our lives, but our deeply rooted faith is what's keeping us together as a family. And you know, it healed my heart to see that we were all in pain, you know, and we were all accepting it. No one was trying to be a strong man. They no, I'm fine. No one was, and subsequently, like, what reminds you? Because I know your daughter got married and it was so for you. And you're like, oh, what a happy day, but what a sad day. Because if Sisa was here, you know, when does it hurt? When do you remember him the most?
Certain milestones, especially when I'm in pain. You know, when I'm in pain, he just had a way of, he would sit next to me and he would just do this to me and it would feel better. You know what I'm saying? That's all he needed to do. And so when I'm in pain, I just need that, and he's not there. But you know what? He watches over me.
The gentle giant.
Yes, he watches over all of us, actually.
Do you remember when I told you the first thing he ever said to my sister? My sister goes up to him and she's like, hey man, you are tall. And then he says, my sister, I had to be all three. I had to be tall, dark, and handsome. I just couldn't be one of them. I had to tick all the boxes. It was definitely him.
Yeah, it was.
What are you happy that he saw about you before he passed away?
I've never looked at it that way. I've actually looked at it in a way that he was happy. That is all that matters. He was happy. You know, he had done what he was supposed to do. He hated school. Oh my goodness, it was tough, eh? So, but he persevered, you know. He got his profession. He was happy.
Yeah.
You know, he was happy. That makes me happy.
Yes.
That's the most important thing. That makes me happy.
So when someone passes away, I always say to people, because this is how I used it to heal my heart when my mom passed away, is that, you know, my mom left a little bit of herself in my dad, in my sister, in my other sister. So if you keep to those people, your mother's not really dead.
Exactly.
Right?
Because you see her.
Because you see her in like those people.
Yeah.
So what do you see in your husband that reminds you of Sfiso, and what do you see in your daughter that reminds you of Sfiso?
It's actually interesting. In terms of Nkanyezi, my goodness, they were so close.
Oh,
they were so close. And that's one of the problems, because siblings don't get as much support, I believe, when you lose your child. The support tends to go to parents.
Yes.
It's like, you know, and the siblings, the pain, and they are not good at articulating the pain. And as a parent, as a mother, you can see that there's a space I can't reach. And you feel so helpless, you know. It's just a few things, you know, when we joke, there are certain things that either Sizwe or Nkanyezi would say that remind you of Sfiso, you know. Yeah, it's just small things.
What are because I know there was a ride for Sfiso, and you know, and so many of your parts of your businesses are named after Sfiso.
Yes,
you know,
it's crazy.
So what are we doing this year?
You know, what we do is just naming our building where Sizwe and I work from, Sifiso. It's defying death. Yeah. It's actually just defying death, you know. And as we continue, we give back in different forms and shapes. And but more importantly, it's when I call my office at Sifiso, he'll always be in my mind. He's with me all the time, and calling his name and naming things after him brings him back. It's really a way of defying death.
I agree with you, because there's a certain thing about death where people don't want you to speak about the person, because it's a little uncomfortable, right? Because people don't know, how are we gonna act, you know, what we're gonna do. So for me, when you speak about that person, it's even when you say, you know, they used to actually upset me when they do this. Because there's one thing that happens when someone passes away, we like to act like they were just a saint. You know, they were just a saint. You're like, guys, Mama used to shout at us, and she used to backhand us, and I'm going to remind you guys, because it wasn't all rosy, you know. But that is beautiful. You saying that, you naming things around you, Sfiso.
Yeah. And by the way, I'm so grateful to Stephen Sad, who had that long ride for Sfiso.
Yes.
And the money was donated, part of it to the Nelson Mandela Children's Hospital, and the other one to KZN Children's Hospital. I really am indebted to him.
Defying death.
Yeah, defying death.
Too defying death. Yeah. Time for a quick ad break. Keep those tweets and voice notes coming. We want to hear more from you. There'll be more when we return. And welcome back to Real Talk. My guest today is Dr. Judy Dlamini, who has not only a passion for business, but interested in the issues of equity across race, gender, sexual orientation, and differently abled people. She has since published her book, Equal But Different, based on her doctoral thesis, which investigated the intersections of race, gender, and social class in women leaders and their career growth. And what a book it was, right? So one of the main quotes that stand out in the book, you interviewed Dr. Pumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, and she said, we should all be mentors and build as we climb. Surely in your life, you can tell us, what are the misconceptions with mentorship? Because many people are watching you now, and I know many people are going to email us like, I wanted to be my mentor. Okay. What are the misconceptions with mentorship?
There are quite a few. One of them, I can only speak for myself. I find that the mentor-mentee relationship, it's a very special relationship, you know? It's not just something that you will go, you know, in some networking event and say, okay, I want you to be my mentor. For me, there has to be some alignment in your value system, because when you don't have that, you don't, in my view, you don't get each other. Maybe it's just the person that I am. For me, the value system is the core of who you are. I actually need to link to that. It doesn't matter what profession you are, because mentorship, in my view, is very holistic. It's not just about, okay, at the board meeting, this is how you carry yourself. It's a holistic relationship. It's your life, it's your marriage, it's your kids, it's your career. It's a holistic, and in my view, that's when you actually make the most of the relationship between the mentor and the mentee.
You just said something I've never thought of, that your mentor doesn't have to be in the same career as you.
No.
Because we always do that. You know, you're like, oh, I want to be a presenter. Let me go to this person because they did it.
And in my view, you actually have to be aligned to the person that person is, because it's, you know, I always say, when you raise kids, the things you say are important, yes, but the things you do have such a fundamental impact on who they become, you know? So it's a holistic thing. It really is. Having said that, one of the things that I always feel I wish I could do more of is to have more mentors, mentees, that is, because you find that the generation that comes after us, you, Anele, and your counterparts, the millennials, have us who've walked the journey that we can pass on what we've learned, you know, in the space, as opposed to my generation, baby boomers, because more often than not, you were the first in that group, especially African women. So you find that there's such a need, because we are there now, but there isn't enough of us, and there isn't enough time for each one of us. So that's one of the motivations for me to write a book, because obviously it's not the same as sitting across the room and talking to someone and actually learning from their experiences. But I find that when you read someone else's story, and so many different stories, there's something to learn.
Yes.
To actually say, oh, is that how she tackled this problem? So that is my small contribution to say, if you buy the book, it will inspire you. It might actually even offer mentorship.
Yeah, it is a mentorship manual.
You know? So that's the objective, that it mentors.
Because one of the other things that stand out in the book for me, Kara Fernandez, she says, interact with people who are different to you. That's how you handle conflict.
Yes. That's powerful.
Especially for our country.
I know.
Where we think that we know each other.
Yeah.
And we think that we understand each other just because we work with each other.
Yeah.
But for me, spending time outside of the office together is where I can understand you.
As a person.
As a person.
Yeah.
So it's all important where, as colleagues, I must go to your house.
Not true.
And you must come to my house.
Exactly.
And you must come to my traditional parties.
I know.
And I must go to your bar mitzvahs.
Exactly.
Because that's the only way we're going to be able to handle conflict in the boardroom.
I know, because I get you. I get the context that informs who you become. And actually, I'm trying to think who else. Oh, Domato. Somewhere Domato talks about one of the things she enjoyed in the US was that they would work together across race, and then afterwards they would actually go and have a drink together. And that's how you get to know people, like you were saying. You know, and I think we need to do more of that as a country across the different social identities that we have.
What are you like when you're angry?
Sure, I get angry so easily. That's the
Really?
sad part.
That I can't believe.
No,
Because as you're talking, I'm like, she's so calm and soothing. You know, she must really like never raise her voice.
Oh, I get really angry. I do. But the problem and the good thing is that you know when I am angry. You know exactly where you stand with me, because everything shows. Sadly.
Okay. But then it's that moment?
It's that moment. We sort it out. We move on. Hopefully you move on too, because things have to be sorted. I'm true to myself.
And when you can because you can see it when somebody hasn't moved on from
Yeah, you
your
can.
moments together of
Yes,
anger.
yeah.
What do? Do you take them back and be like, hey, I can see you're still there.
Yeah.
Let's
yeah.
come here.
Yeah, I try that we resolve issues.
Okay.
I try that we resolve issues. And for me, it's very, my mother used to say, if you tell me the truth, I won't smack you. Oh God, she used to smack us a lot. So there's that part, but also just being open to each other and also saying sorry when you discover that you were wrong. And I say things that are wrong and I apologize. It doesn't really matter where we are in terms of age or position. If I'm wrong, and I will apologize, you know.
What has writing the book taught you about yourself?
That I'm so resilient, that I am
Yes.
so ambitious, that I never give up.
And now you want to write another book
Yes.
on entrepreneurship.
Yes.
Hey.
You're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So have you started?
I've actually registered for an online course because I've lived this entrepreneurship journey. But if I'm going to teach, I actually need to have the academic credentials. So that's how I'm preparing. So yeah, I think what the book has taught me is just how important it is to write a book, because you will talk to people that you'll never meet in different parts of the world. So that is what is pushing me to say, just do more. How else can you assist and share what you have? Because when you're gone, you die with it.
You're gone.
You're gone.
How do you defy death? You
When
write
you're
a book.
gone, exactly. You know? Yeah. I think that's the other thing that I learned when I buried Sviso. It was like, my God, he's gone. And you know what's sad? He was so better than me. He would have done so much better for the world. But he left and I'm here.
So let me do better for the world.
Exactly.
All right.
Yeah.
Look, we're wrapping, but just before I go, do you sometimes sit and ask and tell yourself, yay, but I'm rich, man?
I'm not even rich.
So that thought never occurs you, man. But no, man,
I'm not
yes,
even
man.
rich. I don't have money. Look, I have money, but so what? It's, you know.
Because sometimes, you look at these rich lists and they name you there, and you're like, hey, these people.
I just want to disappear when
Hey,
they
I
do
know.
that. You know, because it's just, it's not nice.
Yeah, because I'm
not
like, they
nice.
don't really know her, you know?
Yeah.
She wouldn't be putting herself in this list.
No,
Okay.
it's not nice.
So with the numerous rankings as South Africa's top 10 richest women over the years, it's plain to see that that's not what defines her. This is Dr. Judy Dlamini. She just keeps striking gold, but never forgetting those who are less privileged. If you're looking to be inspired, I say get the book Equal But Different. We will be back tomorrow, and we'll be throwing it back to the days of studio mix. All I can say is yippee yo, yippee yay. I'm leaving it there. Come back at 5, you'll see why. Bye-bye.